Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today we're carrying on the series, the malt series, and we've got to the roasted malts within the speciality malts. The four malts I'm going to be looking at today is the Black Patent or Black Malt, and then we've got Carafa, Wyman's Carafa malts special. So it's the Carafa Special 1, Special 2 and Special 3. Very similar, but they do bring different qualities to the beer, to the brewing. So as I normally do, I'm going to taste it, the malt that's been obviously gone through its processes. I'm going to taste the crushed malt, and then I'm going to taste it after, well, it's been steeped. So I've already done that, so you can see they're the steeped ones. See if there's any difference, and then actually see what flavours I'm getting. So basically a little bit of information. So roasted malts are basically roasted at high temperature to get that Maillard reaction. They have got some fermentables in them, different ones, because the roasted malts, you've got these. You've also got roasted barley, which is an unmalted, that's gone straight in as a raw grain to be roasted. Then you've got chocolate malt, brown malt, and amber malt. So that'll be the next video. So really, what is the point? The point of them is to bring some colour, some flavours to, well, obviously darker beers, but also some of these can bring colour in very small quantities to an example being like an English bitter. So some breweries might use a little bit of chocolate malt or a bit of black painted malt, very small quantity, like 0.5% of the whole grain bill, just to add a little bit of colour. So they're not going for the flavours, they're only about roastiness or the coffee, chocolate, or any of that. They're just going for the colour. So they are used for that as well. What else have we got to say on it? They leave little to no residual sweetness. The roast, yeah. So like I said before, they do say there is some fermentable sugars left, but it's not a huge amount. But yeah, like the brown malt, that well, I'll explain a little bit more in the next video, but that brown malt was used historically as a base malt. Anything else on there? Oh yeah, because they are like they can bring some astringency, some tannins, maybe too much bitterness if you're not managed, and they don't have to, if you don't want to, go in the full mash. They could go added at the last 5 minutes and then mash, so they're not in there for the full hour or 90, depending on what you're mashing, and that just tries to reduce the possibility of bringing out any of them astringent flavours that you don't want in the beer, which might unbalance the whole recipe that you've put together. So yes, that's something else about them. Where other pale malts and everything that they have to go into, the enzymes, extract the starch, the sugars, these you can actually leave out. Some of them you could do a cold steep, and then add them just for that colour and that little bit of flavour as well. So there is all different options with the roasted malts. So should we get into it? Yeah, so it's just, they can add body, they can add mouthfeel to the beer. Like I said, stringency, high bitterness. Yeah, so yeah, let's get straight into it. So the Black Painting, I could honestly do a full 15 minutes talk about Black Painting in a separate video, the history of Black Painting, how it came about. It's fascinating, but it's not for this video. So Black Painted malt, like I say, it's a highly roasted malt. They say you can use it in small amounts, but then other brewers and experiments have been done. I've not done one myself, but I'm really interested in doing so, where they've used this in a higher percentage, higher amount. So I'm just going to have a little taste, if I can, because they are quite tough, I suppose. I've got a glass of water there, just so I can rinse my mouth out after each one. So in this, as it is not stewed, well, not, sorry, steeped. What was it bringing? I'd say it's got a bitterness to it. It's got a bitterness. In that Black Painting, a little bit of, unbelievably, I'm still getting a little bit of like toastiness off it as well, even at that point there. So there's a little bit of bitterness, there's some toastiness, not much in the way of anything else doing it that way. Yeah, not too much. So I've got a bitterness and a bit of toastiness. Let's just do this. Okay, so in its steeped kind of colour, so you can understand why you could change the colour of some beers just using this. Now the aromas different. That smells a little bit like there's a coffee aroma there now. Yeah, quite intense coffee, roasty aroma. Let's have a taste. Yeah, so it's roasty. It's not too bitter, to be honest. It's not overly bitter. It's just got this roasty taste, slight bitter coffee. And there is a bit of that malt toastiness as well, so that's quite pleasant. It's not harsh, it's quite smooth. So that's a black painting, or the black malt. So yeah, so there's a bit of toastiness, roasty, definitely getting that. And slight bitter coffee, but it's not overly bitter at all. Quite surprising really. So that's interesting. It really is interesting. Like I said, they say you could use that in small amounts, not to bring out too much bitter. It says it does, but if you manage it properly, you can raise that. And after tasting that as well, yeah, it's really pleasant. I do use it in some beers, especially porters. So you want to get that little bit of roastiness, and I suppose like a robust porter, you want that roastiness in there and that little bit of coffee in porters. So yeah, that's really interesting. But like I say, that's a separate video to get really into Black Malt. It's got a video of its own, if I'm honest. Okay, let's move on to the Carafas. So all these Carafas are done. They've been malted by Weyermann. So it's a German. Sorry, I think it's Weyermann, maybe Dutch. I'm not quite sure. I've put on the screen. So yeah, so these basically are dehusked grains, and they go through a process of roasting. When we talk about roasting, it's very similar to how you roast coffee. So that is why I think you get a lot of coffee aromas from these grains, because it's a very similar way of roasting them, like you would roast coffees, and the process, how long you roast them for. Like there's a Carafa 1, 2 and 3. Each one of these have been roasted, so Carafa 3 is roasted longer than Carafa 1. So these are dehusked, and the point of being dehusked grains is to reduce that harsh bitterness. You can get them husked. These are called Carafa Specials 1, 2 and 3. So these are dehusked. It's just supposed to be a smoother on the palate and less bitter. So let's try. So there's Carafa 1. Looks like chocolate. Wow. I'm tasting caramel and coffee, like a coffee caramel. That's really interesting. It's the first time I've ever, well, obviously first time I've done this anyway, but coffee caramel and a little bit of toastiness there. Wow, that's really interesting. So that's Carafa 1. Wow. Coffee caramel. So let's see what it's like in the liquid form. I'll spill it myself. Okay, so that liquid form reminds me of a caramel. I don't know what they're called. It's like a caramel wafer. I'm getting like a caramel wafer taste. So a little bit of chocolate. It really does remind me of a caramel wafer, or sometimes the ice cream cone, but the brown cone, can't quite remember what they're called. It tastes a little bit like that wafer, and it's not bitter. If anything, it's got a little bit of sweetness there to it, and that is really interesting. So that's Carafa 1. That's really interesting. What did they say about that one? Coffee, cacao, dark chocolate. I'm getting definitely getting that caramel from that though as well. They say you could use it up to 5% or 15% in like Irish stouts or imperial stouts. This is, tell you, the recipe I'm going to be building after doing this is going to be interesting. Okay, Carafa 2. Very similar again, similar looking, a little bit darker I suppose. Yeah. I suppose it's more in, it's just Carafa 1 stepped up a notch. A little bit more intense. Coffee definitely coming through on this one. Chocolate, coffee. It's really surprised me how there's no bitterness there. I'm not really getting any bitterness at all. Let's try the liquid form. Surprisingly really smooth, it really is. I suppose when I think that one, to me it just seems like there's a bit more chocolate on Carafa 2 and it's just a little bit more intense than Carafa 1. So I'm still getting like that caramel chocolate wafer, but a bit more intense, and obviously it's darker. So that's something you think about your recipe. If you wanted something a little bit darker, but you wanted them coffee, chocolate flavours, Carafa 2 would be the better option over Carafa 1 at this point. Again, no bitterness, really smooth on the palate as well. Really interesting. It's definitely coffee, chocolate, mocha. Mocha's probably one of the best ways to describe it. Okay, Carafa 3. So Carafa 3 is now leaning more towards the black painting. You're starting to get more roasty vibes. Real Belgian dark chocolate sort of taste. And a slight coffee bitterness as well. Wow. But it's not harsh at all. I was expecting these to be really harsh, to be honest, doing it this way. But it's really surprised me, and it's a really interesting thing to do this. Okay. Let's go for the liquid form. So Carafa 3. For my palate there, there's a little bit of nuttiness as well. So you're thinking of the Carafa 1, you got that wafer, chocolate, caramel, moving on to a bit more coffee and chocolate, deeper chocolate, then you've got this nuttiness that also comes along. Really interesting. Yeah, so that is definitely coffee, dark chocolate and nuttiness to the Carafa 3. That is really, really interesting. So you can see, well, I mean, obviously it's subjective, it's just my palate, but I can see now where I'm picking these up and where I'd use these in the beer. So they do say use, I think even for the Carafas, they're saying sort of like 5%, but you could push it to 15, something like the big robust stouts, porters, imperial stouts. If you want to really push some of these, you could blend some of these, but if you want the darker colour, you go Carafa 3 and black painting, and then these are just slightly darker, but if you, depends on how much you use in the recipe as well, it's going to change the colour of beers. But that's really interesting. Really enjoyed doing that. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.